Hi, Rich. We'll go over now the open impetus turn and then also the feather ending that we talked about today on your lesson. So last time we worked through the wave using the first 3 steps of the reverse turn and the wave and practicing that transition between those 2 figures. Now we did talk a little bit about the impetus turn, but we're going to delve into that a little bit more and cover some of the points that we talked about today. So some of the themes that we're working on is for you to be using your head weight, the upper body weight, and pulling directionally through the head weight so the head's not simply sitting there. It always has a direction. We're also talking a lot about the movement that we do in the base affecting the top, and how in many of these positions we have to feel as though our back and our arm is opposing the direction of the hip. Otherwise, you can get this wobble. We need that resistance and opposition working in the body. We've talked quite a bit about how to use the muscles around your shoulder blades, your lats and your rhomboids. You do that shoulder roll to find the engagement of that part of your back, both for a nice presentation of shape and also for support of your arm. One of the things we started to talk about today on the impetus turn, when you have a sway, then created through that base action, we're particularly focusing on getting the ankles and the feet flexible and on finding the hip joint so that you can articulate through the hip to create that curve. And when we create that sway, the lower side, or the side that of course looks tilted, always has to be supported. So it's very important to feel this opposition again in my arm away from my hips. That's true on either side, so I could put my arms up, I don't have to be in dance hold, and just feel that as I would move the hips leftward, right hip down, that I would feel this space is increasing, there's support there. Likewise on the other side. So I'll go ahead and put myself into the dance frame there, because we know it's very easy to do this and let the top carry on. So we need to learn how to rotate the center towards the partner, put the hip down to create the sway, but keep the maintenance of distance here in your back and your elbow and your shape in the lady to keep that fairly consistent. So we often say to the man, and I think we've talked about this before, that your right arm belongs to your girl and your left arm belongs to you. Now it's true there's going to be some, let's say, not noticeable movement in the left arm. There always has to be some sponginess, give and take. But generally, the telescoping of the arm is the job of the lady. So we tell the lady that both of her arms belong to the man. She's always giving her arms in front of her towards her partner, and you're giving her space in this arm. But very much the line of the man is what we see across his back. And if my left arm moves forward, then I will lose my shape. And also there's a certain stability between the two of us there. When I'm going into promenade as lady, I'll use this arm to show. I'm the one who's opening my shoulder line there a little bit more, and the man is keeping the stability in his left arm. So if I'll demonstrate what was happening on the impetus turn, many times there I was seeing a bit of looseness in the left side of your back, sometimes just the arm swinging, and also the low side being low throughout. So the low side needs to be higher. The low side of the tilted side needs to be raised. So I feel the hip working away from the elbow and the head weight pulled out of the picture. Now obviously I'm not in as, let's say, extreme a position as the lady who has her head weight on a much more pronounced curve. The thing is, for the man to even appear straight, he has to do quite a bit of opposition in the head and neck and upper back to keep his head out of the picture and keep that weight working on the outside. Sometimes we describe the man as being more in the center, or his head being in the center, and the lady's head weight always being on the outside. And that may be true, but my head will not remain here unless I use some opposition, because I will always tend to let my head fall towards my lady. Or if I sway, I will tend to let my head fall in the direction of the sway. So I'm always going to be using opposition. There, keeping my center with my girl, but I'm feeling my upper back, head and neck is pulling away, and I'm feeling this wide open space here. Now if you look in your technique, we talked last time about, I don't know if we mentioned that it's normal sway pattern is usually straight, right, right, or straight, left, left. There's usually a straight going into a sway over 2 steps. And that's true on, if we look at the wave again, we look at the reverse turn as a straight, left, left. Now if we look at the wave itself, it would be a straight, right, right. So if we look at the technique on the impetus turn, it would be straight, left, straight. But it's not that cut and dry, because we don't actually go straight, left, straight. What we've talked about before is how you have to carry on this shape or the sway that you're in a little bit longer, because the step itself is never finished until the feet come together. So when I'm dancing the impetus turn now, in this case I'm coming from the wave, and I have a sway to my right. I have my right hip down. In my right sway, now that means then my right hip is underneath, and my head weight is in this up back curve. I'm making sure here to boost my swayed side. So entering the impetus turn, I'm entering from there. I'm not going to simply go flat. And this is a theme we're talking about quite a bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did on our spin turn video last week, because very much the same thing is happening here. I'm preparing to move backward into a right turn. So I have to create that through my base and through my thighs. And that's going to result in my backward movement. As I commence my heel turn, there's actually about 1/8 of a turn that's made. Sometimes it's described as being made through the toe, the toes, before we actually go, but it's in the process. The heel turn itself will be 3/8 of a turn, normally. Not always, but normally, and in this case, it is. So if we're dancing back, let's say I'll make this my line of dance, then when I come out, my feet will be diagonal center. Now in your case, we're dancing the wave on the short wall. So when we dance off the short wall, we'll actually be diagonal wall of the new long line dance. So I hope that's not too confusing. If this is my long wall, and I dance my wave on the long wall, trying to cram it into a small space, I would dance my reverse turn. My wave would curve towards the line of dance. My impetus turn would come out diagonal center, which would be 3/8 of a turn from the end of the wave. The wave on the short wall, so there we have long wall and short wall. When we finish our wave, our impetus turn is taking us around a corner. So taking it around a corner, diagonal wall of the new long wall, we will be following the impetus with a feather ending. So I'm going to make, roughly, if I divide my turn, and we found this to be very helpful for you to understand the amounts of turn. As I prepare here, I'll get roughly that 1/8 of a turn. And I'm going to pull my head weight exactly the way I did in the spin turn. Now this looks extreme as I'm doing it here in slow motion. It doesn't look very extreme in dancing. The men just appear to be straight. If you don't take that head weight back, you're going to be here. And most of the guys I find will go back, they block me right here, and then my body runs into the man, knocks him off balance, and so the guys are always trying to stop their impetus turn. You really need to pull that head weight, and you need to realize, just like in the spin turn, the weight of the head's being pulled in a curve. From here, if I continue that curve, we'll often say that the body is turning under the head here, Of course, I do also feel some opposition in my head turning against my spine there. So I'm making roughly an eighth of a turn through my legs and feet. My head weight is dancing well back over my left foot, and I'm going to make another quarter of a turn through my feet as I close for the heel turn. Now, I'm not finished yet. I have gotten to where I want to go, but I have not gotten my lady to where she wants to go. I must achieve the promenade position. I have to lead her to promenade. I'm the one pretty much going forward at that point. So having done the eighth, pulling my head, done another quarter. Now I still have this ability to rotate through my feet, my ankles, my legs, my center. And it's broken down very well in the technique. It's described here as our body will be to the line of dance. My feet and my nose are in my new direction, which is diagonal center on a long wall or diagonal wall of the new line of dance. The increased rotation, that where I follow the girl and then I give her the sensation in my hands that way, outward, will open her to promenade. So my feet and my body are not at the same alignment. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, to make sure that all your promenades, that you're not standing square like this, but that you're always rotated towards your girl with your head weight pulled out. Again, this probably looks straight, but I have to really work my ear away from my shoulder in order to be there, or my head will go in. So I've got a certain amount of turn through my feet, and there's the body continuing to turn, continuing also to take my weight forward towards the big toe. Now this helps to keep my lady's weight moving, so that then her head at the last moment will turn and will go to diagonal center. So I have a diagonally forward step towards my new alignment, or as I said in your case, this is diagonal wall, the new line, looking that way, but my body is turned to my girl. I'm going to remind you about one thing we talked about a few months back, that you don't just feel, and when you pull your right leg back into a heel turn, this goes for ladies or gentlemen, you don't just stop. You have a sensation as though you're going to continue the leg back into a walk. Keeps the energy of that thigh traveling backward. I'm going to continue as I'm turning, which I'm turning on my left heel and cheating this foot around, but having the feeling the leg wants to continue back. And that will help me in the end have my feet together this way and not in some position like that with my feet turned down. Often we see this, where this foot doesn't turn, doesn't close to the other foot, or this one stops right at the heel, and because there's more turn to do, we end up in the tango position. So I must continue to dance my right leg back for a long time. The head weight continues back. Now, why do I not fall down? I don't ever take my head weight outside of my feet, but I do take it dynamically. So I'm working back and destroying my decorations, sending my girl outside, and I'm trying to do this very slow so you can see it from here as my feet are going into the heel turn. I'm taking my head weight in somewhat opposition to the lady. It's very hard to do this slow and to do that dynamically without a partner to counterbalance. What do I want the girl to do? I do want her to swing around me, and I want her to dance forward as long as she can. So as the lady is coming forward, she's swinging her leg forward. Because the man closes his feet, she'll end up to the side. And we talked about that being different than a spin turn where the man's feet are in a position of a walk, so that she ends up back and slightly side. In an impetus turn, she ends up to the side because you're on one post area with the feet together. But as lady, now if my gentleman is leading me properly and I know my job, I still am dancing towards my elbow. I have not immediately turned to promenade. Now that's common fault both by the lead of the man, squeezing the girl, turning her way too early, or the girl not continuing her momentum and her intention forward long enough. So we both have a role to play, but this is what I hope she'll do. I hope she'll continue to dance towards her elbow. And then as I begin to rise in my heel turn, I hope to lead her to brush. We're still in a closed position. It's only at the very end that I should feel my girl going to promenade. And I don't want her to have a tremendous amount of turn through here because I hope not to achieve this for the girl. So this is one of the reasons why we often have a different foot placement and position for the partners on different parts of the turn. So she's going to end up with a pointing alignment and with the foot more to the side where the man, his foot is moving forward. So she has a sensation of dancing backwards here. I have a feeling of my head weight dancing backwards, and then my foot catches underneath my body. So I also am able to keep my center to my partner and not be in this position. So we're talking about a lot of things here. A reminder about the leg continuing to travel on the heel turn. A reminder that you cannot go directly straight back. Again, when it's mentioned in the technique as back, there's some things we need to understand that are not exactly written down. There's always going to be a preparation, shaping through the legs, and some of the turn is accomplished early. It's a heel turn, not a heels turn. The heel turn is danced on the left heel or on the back of the foot. The other foot is tracking in, and the actual turn will take place roughly in the third position of the feet, roughly there. So while I'm turning on the heel, then I'm continuing to dance my right leg back and then have a feeling, let's say, tucking my left foot in. Now, this is for the man a little bit different of a heel turn for the lady in the exit. Because the man is in charge and he's got to anchor the step, the man's rise is slightly later than the lady's rise would be on a heel turn. Now, of course, she's swinging around me. She's not dancing a heel turn, so she has her normal rise. I have a late rise. If a lady is dancing a heel turn, she's following the man has rise through his feet, and she will rise at the end of the first step. And the gentleman in his heel turn is rising at the end of the second step. So this is just for your own information about it. You don't have to worry about ever dancing it as a lady, but you should not do what so many men do, which is immediately hop up. And once you're up on the toes in a turn like that, you've completely lost control of your girl. So let's go back for a moment to this straight, left, straight. And we talked about in our video last week that this is a weight change, and that's a step. A step technically means there's going to be a finishing or closing action. It's not a weight change or a rock. So it's at the moment where the step is finished that the technique is described. So if I'm going from my wave and my right sway into the first step of my impetus turn, my straight or my lack of sway is going to happen when I'm roughly in that third position. Now, I will still feel that I've got to control my left hip. It's not deep under, as it would be in a sway. It will be soon. But I must not be sitting. So if I'm going to go here and sit, the heel turn is already over. I cannot turn. So I must have that feeling again of controlling my hips as I change my weight. I'm going to do now a bad. So now I'm doing a sitting action on the end of my wave, and then a sitting action on my impetus turn. Then I'm going to crank myself up, and then I might do this. So these are the things we're trying to get control over now, is keeping the hip under whenever you take weight onto a foot. So although I'm not in a sway, I do have a feeling of controlling the glutes there on my left hip. And so the straight is roughly there. And the sway is going to show up in the heel turn itself, or as my feet close. Now as we press out, I'm not going to immediately try to straighten. I'm going to keep my curve. So we're gradually changing our shapes. Most of the time, we have exceptions where you want a very rapid change of shape. An example of that I think I gave last week, where you might dance a quick sway on a tipple or a tipsy. Another place we might see that is in, we're talking quick step now, in the fishtail, where you have one very quick sway. That's an exception, and that's for brightness as well as a little bit of a technical asset to you. Generally, our sways will be dissolving more gradually with control. So I'm losing now my right sway. I'm going through the straight. My left hip now will move stronger underneath. You could think of moving my left hip towards my lady. I will increase the distance between my hip and my left elbow. I'll pull my head weight, continue my center to the girl. This is a pressure rise. My feet are together. And then I'm going to follow my lady's weight out into the promenade. I am going to make sure I don't sit, that I keep my hip underneath me, but I'm gradually going to be losing my sway there. So I may have forgotten something, I hope not, but we'll go on and talk about the feather ending. Now, what's a feather ending different than a feather finish or the feather step? Feather ending simply is telling us that we're commencing in promenade to dance a feather. So we'll talk about that next.